Welcome to OH-Brew. I'm Craig Morris and I like beer, but I prefer the unique flavors and aromas of the many craft beers available. In this series, I will be in search of Ohio's finest beers. With Ohio ranking 5th in craft beer production and already close to 300 breweries and new ones popping up all the time, we have a lot of beer to drink. Today, we're at the Woolly Pig Farm Brewery just off State Route 36, about 8 miles west of Newcomerstown. This is a small brewery, but big on flavor. One of the nicest things about this place is that there's no TVs or Wi-Fi. What you'll find is great conversation with a lot of the other customers, something I find missing in the larger, more upscale establishments of today. In this episode, we will talk to one of the owners and brewmaster, Kevin Ely. He will tell us about the farm and why it's called the Woolly Pig Farm Brewery. Then, we will move into the brew house, where Kevin will run us through some of the processes of making beer and talk about some of the equipment that we'll see as well. From there, we'll go to the tasting room for some cool refreshments. And finally, we'll talk to some of the patrons for their comments and opinions on the Woolly Pig Farm Brewery's beers. Thanks for joining us today here at, we're at the Woolly Pig Farm and Brewery, and it's in Fresno, Ohio. And joining us today, we have Brewmaster of the Woolly Pig, Kevin Ely. Kevin, thanks for having us here
Thanks
today.
for coming, yeah.
All right, so as we tour the great state of Ohio, we land here in Fresno, and we're looking around and we find this farm, and it just so happens to be a brewery too. Tell us how all this happened right here in Fresno, Ohio.
My wife is from this area. She grew up just in this valley, really about 3/4 of a mile from where we're standing. And she used to come to this farm as a child and sing Christmas carols to Ronnie and Thelma Norman. And they were good friends of her family. And I actually met them a few times several years ago. And that's while I was living in Salt Lake City with my wife at the time, where we met and got married and had some kids, and she got her PhD in biology and all that business. And I was working as the brewmaster for Uinta Brewing Company in Salt Lake City, Utah for about a decade. And that brewery, it's a pretty large brewery. It's about 200 times the size of this brewery, the Woolly Pig Farm Brewery. So we have about a 5-barrel system. The system I built there was a fully automated 5-vessel, 135-barrel system. So I would travel to Germany a lot to acquire. I would go to expositions, source equipment, have equipment fabricated, then go inspect the equipment to accept it for shipment. And on one of my trips, I also saw some of the woolly pigs that we have around the farm here in eastern Bavaria. At that point, I decided that it'd be pretty cool to, if we ever did have a farm, to acquire some of these Mangalitsa woolly pigs, which we ended up being able to purchase the farm from the Normans, because it was a sad story. Ronnie was getting old and he passed away, and we actually were hoping Ronnie was still going to be around and he'd be able to just live on the farm and we would be running it for him, but he ended up passing away and we ended up being able to buy the farm from the family. And with that, we moved our family here from Utah, built the brewery, and that whole process started about 2.5 years ago.
Okay, from talking to you earlier, one just doesn't become a brewmaster. That, like, it goes policeman, fireman, that type of thing. What did you aspire to be first before all this stuff came along?
Well, it's interesting. I started. I went to college to study nutritional biochemistry, and while I was studying that, I realized I could be studying brewing science. And this is while I was a student at University of California at Davis in Northern California. And that was the school of the United States to basically go and pursue an education in brewing science. And I was lucky to be there. So I did. I got a degree in biochemistry and brewing science and did my apprenticeship at Ska Brewing in Durango, Colorado. That was a fun event for me that summer. I lived in the brewery, and it was an unpaid academic apprenticeship, internship, and I needed to make some money, so I was also a raft guide on the Animas River, so I'd push some rubber boats down the river for an hour or two at a time. I had a pager. It's kind of, they paged me, I'd leave the brewery, I'd go raft for an hour or two.
You're dating yourself a little
and
bit.
I'd come back, yep, and I came back. So, but that was in 1998, and since then I've been a professional brewer, so I've worked at smaller breweries, brew pubs, larger breweries, and most recently, like I said, I was at Uinta Brewing in Salt Lake City for about a decade and had a lot of opportunity to do a lot of fun, exciting, and big things there. And now I'm here. I had the opportunity to build the brewery here, which was really fun. Did that with my family, my brother-in-law Aaron, and my wife, and my father-in-law, and my mother-in-law, just the whole family.
Right now I want to talk, we've got some people here enjoying the woolly pigs.
Yeah.
I mean, they are a pretty big attraction here. Tell us a little bit about woolly pigs for us city folk that just might not know what they are.
Well, it's interesting. It's not just city folk who may not know about woolly pigs, but really very few people do. We have regulars here at the brewery that are local, that have been farmers, some of them hog farmers their whole lives, never heard of a woolly pig. In this case, the breed being Mangalitsa. What's special about them is they're a pasture-raised pig, hog, that's raised very slowly. They don't grow very quickly, so instead of a traditional hog taking only a few months to get up to mature size, these animals take about 16 to 24 months. And in that period, they're grazing, so they eat a lot of forage in the pasture, so a lot of grass and roots and plants and whatnot. But we also feed them spent grain from the brewery and give them a little extra feed in the wintertime if they need it. But what's special about them is they're kind of considered the Kobe beef, the Wagyu of pork. And that's what makes them special. So we're raising them and having them. We have special events and special dinners here and there where we'll showcase the Mangalitsa cuts of meat, and that's pretty. That's the main purpose, and they're fun to look at.
Kevin, I notice a lot of picnic tables and a big, huge area, a bonfire, some other things going on around here. And I notice you have this nice drive here for food trucks. You guys bring in food trucks during the week, weekends? What type of thing do you do with that? So
we're open Wednesday through Saturday, and we bring food trucks in normally on Fridays and Saturdays. We've had food trucks here every weekend since spring, probably about March, April. And the winter time is a little bit slower because there's not quite as many food trucks in operation, because sometimes it's just too cold to be out being mobile and running a kitchen. So this winter we will occasionally have some trucks, but we also have lots of local restaurants where we have menus and you can order food from them and they'll deliver, which is a pretty nice option as well. And you can also bring your own food. All right, Kevin, we took a look at the outside and everything that's going on out here. Now let's take a look and see what's inside. Sounds good. We're inside now, and we're with Kevin Ely. And Kevin, the brewmaster here at Woolly Pig's, is going to tell us the whole process of making beer in a nutshell. What we're doing is we're taking malted barley and a little bit of malted wheat, which we buy from maltsters. And I actually just moved a pallet of malt out of the way here that was actually malted in New Brunswick, Ohio, which is really exciting to me because that's Ohio-grown barley with Ohio that is malted in Ohio. That's a new thing. That's an exciting process. So we take the malt and we crush it in our mill, and then we transport it over here. We hoist it up, and this is our grist case, this square box. And that's where we hold the grist until we're ready to mash in. Then we drop it into our mash kettle with some hot water. It's almost like making instant oatmeal, mixing your hot water and your grains. And we have an agitator that mixes it so it keeps it nice and evenly mixed, and we keep the temperature just right where we want it to be. Usually it's somewhere around 150 degrees Fahrenheit. We let it sit. The starches break down into sugars, which is an important step because those sugars are what are going to be fermented to make actual alcoholic beer. So after that process, we move it over to our lauter tun, and our lauter tun is just basically what we're doing is separating the liquid barley sugar extract from the solids, and we collect that into our wort kettle, and that barley malt sugar extract we call wort, spelled W-O-R-T. And in the kettle, once we've collected as much as we need and want at the right concentration, we then stop the runoff, drain off what's left over, take out the remaining solids into a trailer. With that, we kind of just open the door and hoe it out, and then we move that over to the pigs and let them snack on that. So that becomes pig feed. What's left with our wort, we are then waiting for it to boil. It comes to a boil, we add some hops. The hops add a little bit of bitterness, a little bit of hop aroma, and some other hop characteristics to the beer. And when the boiling's done, we cool it down, run it through a heat exchanger, and we have a hose that then runs over into our cellar, where we pump it into a fermenter that's been cleaned and sanitized and has yeast in it that we want to use. And we're generally producing lager style beers here, so we have our lager yeast that we use, and what we're using is a Bavarian style lager yeast, and that's mostly of the types of beers that we're making here.
Most all the products that you get as far as grains and things like that, they're already processed, or you do everything in house?
Well, we're not a malt producer, but almost no breweries are. So we are doing everything from milling onward. So we're not using any pre-produced extracts. We're not using pre-milled grains, but we are using malted grains. But that's what breweries use.
A lot of the breweries that I've been to before, they're normally everything shiny and all just glazed over and whatnot. I noticed yours has wood on the outside.
Yeah.
What's the difference? Can you give me a...
Yeah, there's actually an economic reason. First off, it's really pretty. Second off, it's resources from the farm. All the wood on the cladding these vessels is wood that we've collected on the farm and had, we logged it, we milled it, we had it dried and all of that, and then we stuck it back on the tanks. But the big thing is when I was having the tanks, so I was contracting to have the tanks fabricated, each of these tanks is generally 3 layers of stainless steel. You've got the actual layer that's the heaviest, that's the tank itself. Then you have another layer that tends to be the heat exchanging surface, and the brew house, it's going to be for heating. So we have a steam boiler here that is basically, we have steam that's going around in these jackets heating it. Then there's a layer of insulation, and over that layer of insulation you usually do another layer of stainless steel. And that last layer is pretty expensive. You have all these penetrations poking out of the tank, and then you've got, it's a cylinder, so it's difficult to get the steel to lay flat, and then you have to make it all look nice and shiny. So that last layer of stainless, it's not necessarily the heaviest amount of material on the tank, but it's a very expensive layer. It's very, very labor intensive. And so I negotiated a much reduced price, of almost about 25% per vessel, by the fact that we would do the insulation and the external cladding ourselves. So that was kind of one of the main reasons.
I'll tell you what, all this has made me thirsty. I think it's time to head to the tasting room.
Sounds good.
All right, Kevin, the fun part has begun. Tasting of the beers here in the tasting room. Tell us a little bit about the tasting room and how everything in here came to be.
Yeah, so this building and this portion of the building, this was all a tractor shed, the brew house and the tasting room. And so we converted it into this space where all the wood that's in here is from the farm. So the old wood, the old beams and posts and the red siding, that's all reclaimed wood from buildings that were dilapidated and collapsing on the farm. And some of those I actually reclaimed just by hand, pretty much by myself. Started taking the slate off the roofs and then took the whole building down, just piece by piece, and then stored it all in the big barn till we needed it. The other wood that we call the virgin lumber, so the bar tops and our tables and drink rails and this wrap that comes over the bar area here, this is all wood that's also from the farm. And some of it's not exactly from the farm, it's from our neighbors too that said, hey, we've got a log down. So it's within the range of where we could drive the tractor to pick the log. So yeah, we've got walnut back here, and the slabs that make up this bar top and the tables and the tasting room, they're all from one tree. It's a big elm tree that was behind the pond, behind the farmhouse.
Looks great. Everything here looks top notch. You know, it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but I think that adds character.
Okay.
Speaking of character, beers are the backbone and character of a brewery. And why don't you tell us a bit about what we can expect when we come here to the Woolly Pig Farm Brewery and what you have for us to taste?
Sure. We do predominantly German style beers, mostly German style lagers, and really, if you were to hone down in it, a lot of Bavarian style lagers. And so what you have in front of you is what we call our rustic Helles. We call it rustic just because it's truly a Zwickel beer or a Keller beer, which all of our beers are, which means they're unfiltered and they're being served directly from the lagering tanks in the cold room. And so those are connected right to our taps. So that's kind of a special thing. That's not something you get necessarily everywhere. So our beers are all, we can say,
deliciously unfiltered.
Yeah.
It doesn't get any better than that.
And you know, we're walking an edge where we want to have a good clean lager, but we also don't want to have it be too filtered up where you start to strip some of the really nice fresh flavors of a good fresh beer. And that's what, you know, drinking beer here at our brewery and a small brewery like ours is all about, is having fresh beer. And so that's what we're really focusing on. So here I've got a Schwartz beer, which is a black lager. So this is basically, we oftentimes refer to it as the Pilsner of dark beers. So it's almost like a black Pilsner, if you will. But it's a very easy to drink beer. It's actually right behind our Helles, I would say, our second easiest beer to drink. So dark beers intimidate people, but our Schwartz beer is one of our most popular and best-selling beers, and it's the #1 selling beer in bottles, which is kind of fun, just because it has a lot of flavor, but it's not. It's very palatable and very easy to drink. So,
tell us about some of the other ones you have.
Yeah, so we have what we call a hoppy Pilsner, and it's a traditional German-style Pilsner with a nice, very notable hop character. We use a little bit of Sapphire hops and a few other German-style hops to really get a nice, fresh, noble character that's nice and crisp. And then we have a Dunkel, which is a brown lager, very old traditional style beer. Right now, one of our special beers is a Rauch beer, and I gotta say, it's a short story. You want to say Rauch and not Rausch. It's spelled R-A-U-C-H, but Rausch in German means to have so much fun that you get sick, but Rauch is smoke. So just beware. You don't want to order a Rausch beer. That's something that happens later if you have lots of beer.
Isn't that combined all the beers in one, and that's what you get?
Could be, yeah. And so, but that's a very traditional beechwood smoked lager. In this case, it's done in the style of almost like a Märzen. And from there, we actually have a few other beers which are sour beers, and so we have a Goza and a Berliner Weisse, and these are beers that are not found commonly in Bavaria, southern Germany so much, but they are traditional beers of Germany, and it does allow us to have a little bit of diversity, in our beer offerings to people. So one of them is our fruited Goza, which pours a nice kind of bright pink color and looks almost like a rosé wine, and it's actually very appealing. It has a subtle tartness and a nice light cranberry and hibiscus fruitiness, and just a touch of salt character from the sea salt, and it's a nice different departure from the traditional lagers.
And tell us a little bit about the glassware and you know, not every place you go to has, you know, 3 or 4 different styles. You know, 1 or 2, you know, a little snifter, just a regular old mug.
Yeah, well, you know, we want different sizes, so we have small, basically we call 1/3 of a liter, and then half liter, and then we also have full liters for some of our beers. But, you know, a Helles or a Schwartz beer or something is often going to be served, especially like a Dunkel, in a mug type, a Stein, if you will. And we almost have some traditional ones that are made by a local potter here. And then from there, you get into, you know, your Pilsners. You tend to have a taller fluted glass that tends to accentuate the aroma more. This kind of tends to bring out more of the malty backbone of the beer. And then some of our other lighter sour beers, you know, we're talking about the Goza and the Berliner Weisse. Those are also served in Pilsner-esque or wheat beer-like glasses that tend to really focus on the aromas.
All right, Kevin, well, thank you for your time. We appreciate you giving us the full array of a tour today. And let's say cheers.
Prost, yeah.
Yeah, that's some delicious beer there.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin.
Okay.
All right. So,
Yeah.
what made you come here today?
Good beer, good friend, good place to meet, talk.
I guess I've cut
What's your favorite kind of beer?
I just faded out of it a little bit.
All of them.
All of them?
We just
I'm not
talked about
picky.
it.
And I see you got some growlers. You take them
Oh
home?
yeah, I take it home.
I'm out of work.
Once you drink this beer, you
Kinda
won't
hard to
drink
come by
regular
something.
beer.
It's a lot of time. It's very good at this.
All right, so what are we drinking here?
What do you guys?
This is one of their
We want to.
newer beers. It's got pawpaw fruit in it.
Yeah. Short.
Pretty tasty, pretty light, good stuff. I usually go for the Schwartz beer or the Baltic Porter's a favorite. Something lighter for the afternoon. Sounded good today.
One of your favorite breweries on your list?
Definitely one of my favorites. Close to home, passed by it. I was waiting for it to open last year. Every time I passed by, I'd have to drive up in and see if they were open. And as soon as they opened, then I became a regular. So.
We're here at the Woolly Pig Farm Brewery, and joining me this time is Mike Clark. Mike is a frequent patron here at Woolly Pig. Tell us what your favorite beer is.
I like the Rustic Helles.
Why do you like the Rustic Helles?
Smooth. It just tastes good.
And you spend a lot of time here. Tell us about
Yeah,
that. I mean,
I usually
like this
come
place
here.
a lot.
I do like this place a lot. It's nice to have this place here local. I'd say I come here 3-4 times a month, maybe more.
You get a growler or anything like that?
Oh yeah, I've got a couple growlers. On the weekends, I fill those up, and sometimes when there are really a lot of people here, I pop in, fill a couple of those up, head home. Throughout the week, I like to stop in, sit at the bar, talk, make videos.
There you go. Well, thanks, Mike, for joining
Yes,
us today.
thank you. Have a good one.
Again, we're here at the Woolly Pig, and we're enjoying some little snacks here with some great folks, enjoying the atmosphere here, and apparently they do this like once a week. So
Did they tell on us up there?
they did. They told on you up there.
We do.
You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Mickey.
Mickey, and you are?
I'm Mark.
Mark, and I'm Craig. And well, you guys want to tell us about what your favorite beers are?
Oh, it's just the greatest place. We like all of it.
Nice, laid back, comfortable. It's always fun. Yep. Good times.
You always bring just chips? I mean, don't you bring some like
We
better
order
food
pizza
than
a
just
lot.
chips?
We order pizza a
Oh,
lot.
you
They
order
deliver
pizza?
here.
Oh,
They
good.
have specials if they
Tonight
come
would
to
be a
Woolly
great
Pig.
night for you guys to order pizza.
Yeah.
I would be into that.
The place actually has specials if they're delivering to the Woolly Pig, so you get a better. Oh, you want some of my pizza?
Oh, exactly. I was thinking way ahead of time. I don't think you know
Took
the
me a minute.
entertainment industry very well.
Took me a minute.
We're good at finding ways to get food. But anyway, these fine folks are enjoying the great atmosphere here at the Woolly Pig Farm Brewery, and you should do the same. I hope you enjoyed the Woolly Pig Farm Brewery as much as I did. And remember, the only place to get these great beers is at the brewery itself. So do yourself a favor, head out to the Woolly Pig Farm Brewery soon. Please join me for another episode of OH-Brew as I'm in search of Ohio's finest beers.